Make sure the microphone's on. Testing 1, testing 2. Good Monday morning. It's a good way to start the week. Tons to tackle today, and we're in the long stretch of the General Assembly returning. The House back today, the House and Senate back Tuesday. They've got until May 31st to pass a budget with simple majorities. Who knows what else they'll pass, especially after changing election law in just a matter of days last week, with the governor signing that bill we talked about on Friday. So we'll talk about that. Also, we'll have to tackle what's going on up in Chicago. Arrest of the suspect in the shooting death of Officer Louis Weska. So we'll get to that as well. William Kelly, reporter out of Chicago, talked with him earlier, so we'll hear about that. So plenty to tackle here. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join us each and every weekday morning as we break stuff down, what's going on with you. Somebody asking for the volume to be turned up slightly. Let's see if we can do that for you. I want it to peak out. All right, so you guys let me know in the live chat if it gets too loud to where it's peaking, because we don't want that to happen. Listen, I mean, it's just talk, and we're not listening to, stereo music or anything. But anyways, shout out to those joining the chat this morning. AJ, Tattooed Squirrel, Friedman Brock, Captain Mike, Christopher Luke, Save the Humans, Keppel, Rawhide, Sebastian. And who was the first? Daniel was the first to say hello this morning. Luke, Jordan, Tenebris, good morning, everyone. Kent, Dave DeHunter. I think that's Representative Calkins. Good morning. Got others tuning in. All right, so a lot to tackle here. So stay tuned. I talked with several potential candidates who are going to be impacted by that law change Governor J.B. Pritzker enacted to the hastily changed election code lawsuit, and possible lawsuits that are going to come out of all this. So stay tuned. We'll get to that next here with Bishop on Air.
An ethics bill. It really does make sure that we don't have backroom deals to put people on the ballot and run as a result of some small group of people in a smoke-filled room making the choice. So I think, to me, more transparency is better. Yeah. Thank you.
I feel robbed. I feel violated. I feel, this was something that I really was proud of. I look forward to it. I did it for me, for my family, but most of all for the American people.
It was not a good feeling to have the rug pulled from under us, especially when we are so close. We had a deadline. We still had a few weeks to, finish the work that we started. And this bill completely stopped us in our tracks.
Because this is it's just silly. I mean, it's just silly what they would do something like this, especially at the 11th hour. So, yeah.
So there's just some of the potential candidates impacted by the law that the governor signed Friday to change election law. Welcome back. I'm Greg Bishop with Bishop on Air. Thanks for hanging out. And we talked about this on Thursday morning after the House amended a bill dealing with DCFS, anticipating that the Senate would take it up. The Senate took it up on Thursday, and then the governor got it and signed it on Friday. So what this law ultimately does is it essentially fills the ballot with only 3 non-binding resolutions for voters to sound off on, which also blocks any other potential ballot resolutions to get on the November ballot. You also have the change of slating of candidates, where we discussed if a candidate didn't run for the state house in the primary, then that slot cannot be filled by the local party through what is called slating. Regardless of your thoughts on slating, and there's plenty of criticism to be had about that process, but that's the rules that were laid out in election code heading into this election cycle for 2024. So here we are, just a few months before the November election, and Democrats at the State House, as it's been characterized elsewhere with their supermajority, muscled in election law changes for the election coming up in November. So I was able to connect with a couple of individuals who are being slated. They're putting the paperwork together to be slated and ultimately get on the ballot, and called them up Friday after the governor decided to sign this measure into law effective immediately. And I connected with Leslie Collazo up in the Chicago area. She's looking to run as a candidate for the Republican Party to take on a uncontested Democrat, State Representative Sean Ford. He did not have a Democratic primary opponent, and there was no Republican opponent on the primary ballot. So here's Leslie talking about how she felt after Governor Pritzker signed the law, essentially saying that people can't be slated if they weren't on the primary ballot.
I was shocked initially, and then I felt like, well, this is no surprise for our government to pull a stunt like this. I was very upset and really disappointed. We have really been actively petitioning, canvassing, talking to folks, enlisting volunteers, and to have to go back to everyone and say, hey guys, sorry, but this bill popped up to me out of nowhere. I'm really not sure how something like this can happen without people knowing about it, especially if it affects you. But I think that's one of the things that I find really frustrating is the lack of transparency in the way things are done in the government. So we had a lot of disappointed folks, but I don't think we're going to give up so easily. It was not a good feeling to have the rug pulled from under us, especially when we are so close. We had a deadline. We still had a few weeks to, finish the work that we started. And this bill completely stopped us in our tracks. And I'm offended by that. Completely.
So others I talked with, James Kirshner, he is looking to get on the ballot as a Republican for the 13th Senate District. State Senator Robert Peters from Chicago ran unopposed in the Democratic primary for that Senate district. There were no Republicans on the March primary ballot. Kirshner responding to Governor Pritzker signing this measure after just 2 days of it passing through the House and the Senate.
It's pure shock. It really is. I can't think of a better word. I don't even know what to say, because I understand that, the opposing parties don't always get along. I get that. That's been since I was a child, right? But no one's ever tried to absolutely, clearly, and blatantly usurp the process to have some kind of, race for a seat or a rep position or what have you.
So, again, shock, feeling cheated, having the rug pulled out from underneath of them. Another candidate I talked with, Giovanni Rivera, he said that he was prepared to be slated in the district up in Chicago where there was no Republican that ran for the primary. And Giovanni, again, saying that he's shocked at what happened.
I feel robbed. I feel violated. I feel, this was something that I really was proud of. I look forward to it. I did it for me, for my family, but most of all for the American people, for my fellow Chicagoans, being a native of Chicago, born and raised here back in 1980. and wanting to fix the country. But I haven't even given a chance to get on the ballot because this government is basically took that away from me, took that right. It's unethical, it's unprofessional, it's not American. And it hurts. It really hurts. You know, I feel like a fool. I've been telling my friends and family that I'm, running. I'm very proud of that, And my children, most of all my children, they looked up to me. They had more respect for me than anything. And I explained to them what the process is, what am I doing, why am I doing it. And very proud of me. But now I had to tell them, hey, I had this opportunity stolen from me because of the government.
So Javandi talking again about how he was lined up, getting ready to do this. There was nobody on the March primary ballot for the Republican Party in that district. State Representative Eva Dina Delgado in that Chicago district had no Democratic primary opponent. And I was looking at, some of the statistics just to show you people, somebody asked, well, was this surely going to benefit Democrats? We had talked about this before heading into the March primary. More than half of the available seats up for grabs in the Illinois General Assembly, the party was already determined. From my review in the March primary, there were 16 Democrat Senate seats guaranteed with no Republicans slated. 5 were only Republicans seats with no Democrats running. So again, 16 in the House and the Senate versus 5 in the Senate. So 16 Democrat seats had no Republican opponent possible for the November election unless somebody's slated after the primary. 5 districts had only Republicans with a seat with no Democrat running. For the Illinois House, there were 44 seats that only had a Democrat running, and only 22 seats only had a Republican running. Democrats already have the supermajority in both chambers, and if Republicans aren't allowed to slate candidates post-primary, then that majority is guaranteed. So interesting to see all of this. Is there going to be a potential lawsuit here? And that's a question I posed to Leslie Collazo, who responded saying that's something that's being considered.
There are ideas circulating currently at the moment. I plan on fully being on board with any ideas that align with litigation. I feel like that is the reason why those processes are there. And if we have to fight it that way, then we will. I think this is really unfair, especially for the community that I represent, which is one of the poorest in the city of Chicago and has the most struggles, who have been negatively affected by all of the decisions that are made by lawmakers in this district.
So clearly a lot more to be said about this, because even Javandi Rivera saying that he would jump on a lawsuit if one was brought forward.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Yes. I think the government, there's no reason for, first of all, I was already slated. If he put a law out this morning saying, okay, from here on out, we can't do this, okay, fine. But I was already slated. Other people were slated. We worked hard for this opportunity. I don't think it's right that the government can pick and choose laws that deconstitutes other people's rights. Everyone has a right for their voice to be heard. Everyone has a right to run for office or to be a teacher. Why are you taking these rights away from the people because it doesn't benefit you or your party?
So, again, potential lawsuit, I asked James Kirchner that question as well.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't directly go and file a lawsuit. But if there's something I could do, or put my name in a petition or something, I'll do it. Yeah, any legal means I can take, I'd happily do, because this is it's just silly. It's just silly what they would do something like this, especially at the 11th hour. So yeah.
Again, the question to these 3 potential candidates, and these are just 3 that I had talked to early Friday after the governor signed the law. You also have a district where State Representative Katie Stewart ran in the primary, got through the primary, but there was no Republican in that district, and that's a Southern Illinois district around the Edwardsville area. And there was a Republican who already turned in their signatures to get slated. So you've got across the states this potential blocking of these candidates. And if you check out the story at thecentersquare.com, again, check out thecentersquare.com regularly every day. Make it part of your news consumption ritual. Candidates feel cheated, violated, robbed after Pritzker enacts law ending slating. But despite the law, the Elections Board will accept those petitions. And I talked with the State Board of Elections briefly on Friday after talking to these potential candidates. And they said that they're already accepting some slating filings. And despite the new law, they're going to continue to accept them under the original deadline of June 3rd. Now, after that, there's an objection process. June 10th is a deadline to object. There could also be litigation from those objecting to the law or from candidates on the ballot looking to use the law to block opponents seeking to be slated. So it's not the last we've heard of this. We'll see what happens. Even Governor J.B. Pritzker could be asked about it later on today, as he has a couple of different events. So we'll see what ultimately comes about all of this. But keep it with Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and don't forget to check out thecentersquare.com for the latest of what's going on at the Illinois State House. Greatly appreciate you guys tuning in.
Response to the profound loss of Officer Luis Huesca 2 weeks ago, the Cook County State's Attorney's Office has taken decisive legal action. As you have heard, we have filed first-degree murder charges against Xavier Tate Jr., as well as charges of aggravated vehicular hijacking and possession of a stolen firearm in the death of Officer Huesca. The defendant will appear in first appearance court at the Layton Criminal Courts building starting at 11:30 this morning in room 102.
That is Cook County State's Attorney Kim Foxx Friday, joining Chicago Police Department Superintendent Larry Snelling and Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson with charges against the suspect in the shooting death of Luis Huesca. Welcome back to Bishop on Air. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I chatted with William Kelly, the reporter out of Chicago, about crime and the arrest of this individual in the shooting death of an off-duty law enforcement officer in Chicago. And William gives his take, especially looking at recent crime and how it's impacting the city of Chicago.
Great news. The CPD and other law enforcement agencies were able to arrest the suspect in the murder of Officer Huesca. Bad news. We have hundreds of thousands of other unsolved shootings and murders in the city of Chicago. 31 shot over this weekend, 6 killed. And it's important for people to know that, these are real people. They're not just statistics or numbers. 2 people were on Clark Street, presumably after a Cubs game this weekend, Saturday night. I was there. I could have been the guy shot. But a man and a woman in their 30s were shot, both of them, in the leg. Now, these are 2 people who are probably in the hospital right now. Maybe they'll walk with a cane for the rest of their lives, if they can walk at all. And we don't even hear their names anymore. There used to be a time, Greg, if you remember, but they are, thankfully they did get the suspect in the Officer Huesca shooting, but that required apparently the entire police force to find this guy, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars and man hours and tracking phones and this and that and the other thing. Sadly, we don't see that type of response for apparently any of the other shootings or murders, Greg.
And you've also got a lot of questions about the looming protests and encampments of pro-Palestinian protesters on college campuses across the country, even here in Illinois, and what that means for safety in the weeks ahead for the Democrat National Convention. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson asked about the protests and the uneasiness some may be feeling about how to handle that.
Our ultimate goal is to make sure that people are safe, and anytime demonstration is being delivered, and we're going to continue to assess all of these demonstrations and these moments of demonstration.
You just heard. So moments of demonstration doesn't necessarily, indicate what could possibly happen on the streets if things get violent, even if it's just a mere confrontation with a police line trying to have certain zones. Even the ACLU has sued over what they see as infringement on free speech and free assembly by setting up these zones and it being so not necessarily clear as to where these zones are going to be. People have to check a Chicago police website to know whether or not they're going to be in the right zone or not. So the questions about safety continue, and that also has reporter William Kelly given his assessment of the situation.
Well, this is this kind of also goes to the issue of crime, doesn't it? If the police are focusing on people who want to protest, how is it going to be able to prevent the dozens of armed robberies that occur every morning? Especially since they haven't been able to prevent them without protests. So now add protests, add DNC to the mix, and CPD is, if they're being directed or deployed to, try and drag students around the campus, then, you can pretty much guarantee that armed robbers will have a field day in Chicago this summer. They did at a bar that actually is very close to my heart, the Irish Nobleman Pub, where I was elected, believe it or not, Greg. I actually got elected to something. The president of the Ancient Order of Hibernians. That's right. But at any rate, over the weekend, security cameras caught, again, these suspects, usual description, walked into the bar, the pub, and told all of the patrons to just empty out their pockets, turn out their pockets, and walked out shooting at Declan, the owner of the Irish Nobleman Pub. And Declan tells me he's thinking about moving the Irish Nobleman to Indiana now. So this is what's happening in Chicago with total lack of police enforcement of the laws.
And something else to consider is you might have police focused on, say, for instance, President Joe Biden's appearance or the DNC or other large dignitaries or events. But when it comes to the crime that's happening in certain parts of the city every day, not just on weekends, the shootings that are happening, people not just dying, but being maimed for life. Police also at the same time have to, think about the optics of their job and how that impacts how they, fight crime. Looking at some of these headlines, you've got 9 members of Chicago Police Department on a leaked Oath Keepers list. Top cop defends investigation into officers' ties to Proud Boys. The questions about January 6th and so on. The police superintendent, Larry Snelling, was asked about this on Friday, and he defended the investigation into possible extremist ties that some Chicago police officers may have.
Our Internal Affairs Division has reached out to everyone to gather information to determine if these officers were actually proven to be members of hate groups. So that information will be there for everyone to read. We also invite the Inspector General's office to take a look at every aspect of that investigation and give us feedback.
So the mayor also being asked about this, and he says the investigation is going to continue.
Well, look, there's an entire set of standards that allow for full investigation to be able to substantiate whether or not someone belongs to, an unconscionable hate group. In those instances in which you've described, I'll be quite frank with you, I will happily do additional research around what you've just described.
So clearly more is going to come out about that, but people pointing to, Oath Keepers were, found guilty in the January 6th deal, and the Proud Boys, they did bad stuff on January 6th. But this list apparently is for individuals who were part of Oath Keepers way, way, way before that. So, Oath Keepers is a group that was decades ago, it seems like, really focused on making sure that there was constitutional policing with law enforcement, and that law enforcement upheld their oath to office. But clearly, something went astray with that group. Especially after all that came out about January 6th. But those are, of course, just some of the things going on up in Chicago when it comes to law enforcement and crime. But you also have the Chicago teachers demanding their new contract. And here's a headline from Fox News. Chicago teachers' $50 billion demands include pay hike, abortions, and migrant accommodations, including members getting 9% annual wage increase through fiscal year 2028. William Kelly sounding off on this as well, talking about, Brandon Johnson coming from that sphere of the teachers union. Looks like they've done some negotiating.
Mayor Johnson's only resume item. I think most normal Americans have at least 10 things on their resume before they decide they want to run for mayor of Chicago, But Johnson's only resume item was he was an activist, part-time teacher at the Chicago Public Schools, which, is honorable in and of itself, unless, as mayor, you decide to prioritize them above all. Maybe taking a slight second only to migrants or something. But here we go. Johnson's looking for billions upon billions. 50.7 billion is the last count. And add that to the $1.25 billion loan he took out, and the $70 million he just recently committed to migrants. Pretty soon, we're talking about real money here, Greg.
So a lot going on in Chicago. We'll do what we can to keep you posted on that as well here with Bishop on Air. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Email me, bishoponair@gmail.com. You can also find all the work I put together with my team at the Center Square. Just go to thecentersquare.com. Again, thecentersquare.com. Appreciate you guys being here each and every weekday morning.
If I can just follow up on what was said before.
All right, got to get out of here. Really do appreciate you guys. And share it up. Tell your friends about it. It's pretty incredible to see 257 people this late in the game watching live. So the pressure's on. Take care, Dr. Fark. You got Warbot, Save the Humans still here, Warsaw, Nakuda, Doobie Lou, JL, and more. I really do appreciate you guys being here and hanging out. And let's just keep the conversation clean in the live chat, all right? Be safe. We'll see you soon. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I gotta get out.